Have you ever left a party feeling more alone than when you arrived? Like you spent 2 hours performing a one-person show that nobody bought tickets to, and now you're driving home replaying every conversation, every laugh that landed weird, every moment where you could feel yourself trying too hard. I want you to think about the last time you met someone new and really wanted them to like you. Take a second. Do you remember that feeling in your chest? That tightness, like your heart was a fist clenching around the desperate hope that this person would think you were cool, interesting, worth their time. Oh Lord, it is good to be here with you. Welcome back to the Confident Connection Lab, where we talk about the uncomfortable truths of human connection that nobody else wants to admit out loud. If that opening triggered something in you, if you felt that chest-tightening recognition, hit the like button right now. Not for the algorithm, but so I know we're in this mess together. It genuinely helps more people find this space where we can be honest about how hard this stuff actually is. Let me tell you about the worst friend audition I ever bombed. I was 26, new to a city, and I got invited to a dinner party by a coworker. The host was this effortlessly cool guy who seemed to know everyone, the kind of person who could make a story about buying milk sound fascinating. I decided I needed to impress him, needed to prove I belonged in his orbit. So I showed up armed. I'd prepared interesting questions, rehearsed funny anecdotes from my life, even researched the restaurant he mentioned liking so I could casually drop knowledge about their chef. I was ready to be the most interesting person he'd ever met. The evening lasted 3 hours and I talked for probably 2.5 of them. I left that dinner feeling electric, like I'd nailed it. Then I never heard from him again. No follow-up text, no second invitation, nothing. It took me weeks to understand what happened, and when I finally did, it felt like someone had pulled back a curtain I didn't know was there. Here's what I learned, and this is critical. I had confused connection with performance. I had treated friendship like a job interview, where I needed to demonstrate my value, to prove I was worth the investment of someone's time and attention. And in doing so, I had made the entire evening about me. Psychologists call this the performance trap, and it's the single biggest reason smart, interesting people struggle to make genuine friends. When we try too hard, when we over-prepare and overshare and overcompensate, we're not actually connecting with people. We're auditioning for them, and nobody wants to be friends with someone who's constantly auditioning. Listen closely to this distinction, because it's subtle, but it changes everything. Authentic connection feels like a conversation where both people are equally curious. Forced effort feels like a monologue with occasional pauses for the other person to applaud. One is energizing, the other is exhausting, and people can sense the difference within minutes of meeting you. Think about the friends you actually have, the ones you can call at 2 a.m. I'm willing to bet you didn't win them over by being impressive. You won them over by being real, by showing them the parts of yourself that were messy and uncertain and human. You won them over by shutting up long enough to be interested in their mess too. Here's the paradox that nobody warns you about. The harder you try to be liked, the more unlikable you become. Not because you're a bad person, but because effort has a smell to it. People can detect when you're working too hard, when every sentence is calculated, when you're performing instead of participating. And that smell triggers something in their brain that says, this person needs something from me, which makes them want to back away. I want you to hear me on this. The version of you that's trying to impress people is not your best self. It's your most anxious self, your most desperate self, your most exhausting self. It's the version of you that goes home and replays conversations in the shower because, something fell off, but you can't name what. We've all been there. We've all shown up to social situations carrying the weight of our own loneliness, trying to force connection through sheer willpower and rehearsed charm. And we've all learned the hard way that friendship doesn't work like that. The research backs this up in a way that's almost cruel. Studies on social connection consistently show that people are most attracted to others who demonstrate what researchers call effortless authenticity. Not careless authenticity, not sloppy authenticity, but effortless. The kind that looks easy because it isn't hiding anything. When you're trying too hard, you're hiding. You're hiding your uncertainty, your awkwardness, your very normal human need for approval. And that hiding creates distance, because people can only connect with what you're willing to show them. Let's pause and unpack what this actually looks like in practice. Think about someone you know who's universally well-liked. I bet they're not the most interesting person in every room. I bet they don't have the best stories or the quickest wit. What they have is a quality of presence that makes you feel seen when you're around them. That quality isn't magic, and it isn't something they were born with. It's a skill they learned, probably through the same painful trial and error you're going through right now. They learned to stop performing and start participating. They learned that friendship isn't about being impressive. It's about being interested. Here's what happens when you stop trying so hard. You create space. Space for other people to show up, space for genuine curiosity, space for the kind of messy, imperfect conversation that actually builds connection. You stop being the person who needs to fill every silence, and you become the person who makes silence feel comfortable. We talk about the psychology of connection every week here at the Confident Connection Lab. If you want to master this stuff with us, if you want to learn how to stop exhausting yourself in social situations, make sure you're subscribed. We're building something real here, a community of people who are done pretending they have it all figured out. Next time you're in a social situation and you feel that urge to perform, I want you to try something. Take a breath. Ask yourself, am I trying to be interesting, or am I genuinely interested? That one question will change everything about how you show up, and it'll change everything about who shows up for you. So here's the uncomfortable question. If trying hard pushes people away, what the hell are you supposed to do instead? Just show up and hope for the best. Stand in the corner like a socially anxious lamp and wait for someone to notice you? Not exactly, but I need you to understand something that's going to sound completely backwards at first. The secret to attracting better friends isn't learning more social skills or becoming more interesting. It's learning to be strategically lazy about the things that don't matter and intensely curious about the things that do. Let me break this down with a story that changed how I think about friendship entirely. About 6 months after that disastrous dinner party I told you about, I ended up at another social gathering. This time, I was exhausted from work, emotionally drained, and I had zero energy to perform. I showed up late, grabbed a drink, and found a quiet corner where I could just exist without having to be on. A guy sat down next to me, and instead of launching into my repertoire of interesting facts and rehearsed stories, I just said, "Man, I am so tired. How are you holding up?" That question, that simple, honest acknowledgement of my own state, opened a conversation that lasted 2 hours. We're still friends today. Here's what happened. I accidentally discovered what I call the low-effort authenticity technique. Essentially, it means showing up as whoever you actually are in that moment, without the performance layer, without the try-hard energy, without the desperate need to be impressive. The research on this is fascinating. Social psychologists have found that people form stronger bonds when they perceive mutual vulnerability. Not manufactured vulnerability, not the kind where you overshare trauma to create false intimacy, but the simple acknowledgement that you're human, and sometimes humans are tired, awkward, or uncertain. Listen closely to this distinction, because it's the difference between forced effort and authentic connection. Forced effort says, I need to hide my flaws and amplify my strengths so you'll think I'm worth knowing. Authentic connection says, here's where I actually am right now, and I'm curious about where you are. Let's get practical about what this looks like in real conversations. Next time you're in a social situation, try this. Instead of thinking about what you can say to impress someone, ask yourself what you're genuinely curious about. Not what question will make me seem interesting, but what do I actually want to know about this person? That shift from performance to curiosity is what I call the interest over impressive framework. It's simple. When you ask questions you actually care about hearing the answers to, your entire energy changes. Your body language relaxes, your voice drops into a more natural register, and people can feel that you're genuinely interested rather than just filling airtime. Here's the thing we need to talk about. Most of us have been conditioned to think that being a good friend means being entertaining, helpful, or valuable in some tangible way. We think we need to bring something to the table, or people won't want us there. That's the performance trap talking, and it's a lie. The friends who stick around aren't the ones impressed by your carefully curated persona. They're the ones who feel seen by your attention, who feel comfortable in your presence because you're comfortable in your own skin. Even when your skin feels awkward and uncertain, which it often does for all of us. I want you to hear me on this. The next time you're about to meet someone new or hang out with potential friends, give yourself permission to be boring. Not careless, not rude, but boring in the sense that you're not trying to be anything other than present. There's a specific technique that makes this easier, and I learned it from watching people who are effortlessly well-liked. I call it the echo and expand method. When someone tells you something, instead of immediately jumping to your own related story or trying to top their experience, you echo back what you heard and then ask them to expand on it. It sounds like this. Someone says they had a rough week at work. Instead of launching into your own work stress story, you say, "That sounds exhausting. What made it particularly rough?" You echo their feeling, validate it, and then invite them deeper into their own experience. People remember how you made them feel heard way longer than they remember your clever observations. Here's what happens when you do this consistently. You stop being the person everyone talks at, and you become the person everyone wants to talk to. Not because you're impressive, but because you make space for other people to be themselves without judgment or competition. We've all met that person who makes everything about them, who turns every conversation into an opportunity to showcase their life. We've also all met that person who somehow makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room just by the quality of their attention. Which one do you want to be? The counterintuitive truth is that being interested is more attractive than being interesting. People don't want a performer. They want a companion, someone who can sit with them in silence without making it weird, someone who asks follow-up questions because they actually listen to the first answer, someone who doesn't treat friendship like a transaction. Let me give you the audio roadmap for this. Next time you're in a conversation, notice when you start crafting your response while the other person is still talking. That's the performance mode kicking in. When you catch yourself doing it, take a breath. Let go of whatever clever thing you were about to say, and just listen until they finish. Then ask a question about what they actually said. This feels uncomfortable at first because we've been taught that silence means failure, that if we're not filling the air with our words, we're not contributing. But the truth is that silence is where connection lives. Silence is where people feel safe enough to say what they actually think instead of what they think you want to hear. Here's the final piece, and it's the one that ties everything together. The reason doing less attracts better friends is that it filters out the people who are only interested in your performance. When you stop performing, the people who are there for the show leave, and the people who are there for you stay. That filtering process can feel lonely at first. It feels like you're losing friends when really you're just losing an audience. But what you gain is so much more valuable. The kind of friendships that don't leave you exhausted, that don't require you to be on all the time, that let you show up as whoever you actually are on any given day. So here's your practical application. This week, go into at least one social interaction with the explicit goal of being boring. Don't try to impress anyone, don't rehearse stories, don't perform. Just show up, pay attention, and see what happens when you stop trying to be the most interesting person in the room. I promise you'll be surprised by who sticks around.